Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. Alan Carter is with us. He's the CEO of Cabral Gold, which is focused on the Cuiú Cuiú project in Brazil and trading on the TSX venture with the ticker CBR. The company has announced a 25,000 meter drill program targeting some of the higher grade opportunities in the area. Alan will go through the Cabral presentation, followed by a Q&A at the end. So you can feel free to enter questions at the Q&A box below or email me at tina@adcap.ca. The presentation will contain forward-looking statements that you can review on the company's website. Thanks, Alan, for being here. Looking forward to hearing the presentation.
Well, thanks everybody for attending this webinar. It's a first for me. My apologies in advance to some of you who are a bit more familiar with the story than others. But as Tina said, there'll be lots of time for questions at the end. So our company is focused on a gold project in Brazil. We already have a resource here of about 1 million ounces. It's 43-101 compliant. It's part of a district, an emerging district, which is getting larger. There is the potential here for the discovery of multiple deposits. And as Tina said, we've just embarked on a 25,000 meter drill program. So there's lots of potential catalysts coming within the next few months. I won't run through the disclaimer, but it's there for you guys to read. So as a management and board team, we've been involved in the discovery of 5 gold deposits in Brazil. One of which is in production, Palito, and one of which is fully permitted, the TZ deposit, which is actually right next door to us and is owned by Eldorado Gold. I'll mention that in a moment. Cuiú Cuiú, which is the key asset that I'm going to be talking about here, and then 2 other deposits in Brazil, which are slated for production next year. As a management team, we own about 19% of the issued and outstanding shares in the company. And so far, I've personally invested about $1.7 million, which is an awful lot of money for me. We sold our last company to Ross Beatty in May of 2016, and that's now part of Equinox Gold. As I said, we have an asset here. We have a large land position over this area called Cuiú Cuiú. We own it 100%, so there's no option deal here. And of the historic resource here, around about 80% of it is inferred. As I said earlier, this is a district scale project. So there was an enormous gold rush that started here in this region in Brazil in 1978, involved around 1 million people, extended for about 15 years. And there was about 20 to 30 million ounces of placer gold mined during that period from a whole series of streams and drainages across quite a large region called the Tapajós. And Cuiú Cuiú was the largest of over 100 areas that will produce placer gold. We've been making some recent discoveries here, which I'll come to in a moment. And as I said earlier, the potential here is for the discovery of multiple deposits within an area of about 15 by 10 kilometers. Lots of high-grade upside on this project. So drilling last year, we got some very good drill intercepts within the existing 2 deposits that comprise that resource, including 7.6 meters at 18 grams and 5.6 meters at 13 grams. And I think significantly, we also have high-grade drill intercepts in 8 other target areas, which are outside the existing resource base. So we're optimistic that several of those may ultimately prove to be deposits. And as I said, we have a very aggressive drill program, which is currently in progress. We've made some pretty exciting surface discoveries in the last 6 months or so, notably the Alonso target, which was new to us in February of this year, where boulders on surface are averaging about 91 grams a ton. I'll talk a little bit about that. We're actually drilling that target right now. And the Medusa target, which is 4 kilometers further to the east, where similar boulder terrain, the samples here are averaging about 26 grams a ton. And that will be the second of around about 10 targets we're going to drill as part of this drill campaign. We've made some pretty exciting drill intercepts in 2019 on new areas, and I'll come to those, notably Machiche and Morro de Lua. This is a corporate snapshot. So the current share price is around about 48 cents. We have just over 100 million shares issued. There are quite a lot of warrants here, just under 18 million warrants, which are set to expire on the 25th of November. They're priced at 20 cents, so they're well in the money. And so this is a company with a basic market cap of about $50 million Canadian. And as I said, that box in the left there shows what I've invested in just the last 3 private placements. It obviously doesn't include everything. You can see the stock performance chart there in the bottom right. It's obviously, the stock has performed quite well in the last 2 or 3 months. And besides the insiders owning 19%, we have some significant institutional shareholders here, which include Phoenix, Crescat, and some of you may be aware that Crescat's quite an interesting group. They have a number of videos. I'd encourage you to watch Crescat video number 6, which is an interview that they did with Quinton Henning on our company. Dundee, Royal Bank of Canada, and Cisco are some of the other institutional shareholders here. Here's the board and management. I'm very proud of this team. We have an excellent team. Paul Hansard has worked with me for a very long time. He's a chartered accountant, ex-KPMG. Rory McKnight is our manager in Brazil. He's a geologist, and he was directly involved in putting the first gold mine into production in this region. Adrian MacArthur is another PhD, and he runs our exploration program. And our directors include Mark Smith, who's an executive chairman, Derek Wyrush, who is head of our audit committee, and Dennis Moore, who's been a friend of mine a very long time and lived in Brazil for 12 years. So for those of you that are not familiar with Brazil, I think it's worth just taking a couple of minutes talking about why Brazil. Well, the first thing is that there are a number of very large gold producing companies with active mines in Brazil. Kinross's largest gold mine is in Brazil. Yamana Gold has a very active mine, a large mine in Brazil. Anglo Gold Ashanti is here with 3 mines. Equinox, which is a relatively new entrant into the gold space I mentioned earlier, 4 of their 6 mines are in Brazil. Been quite a lot of M&A activity in the last 12 to 18 months. Lundin Mining paid $800 million US cash for one of Yamana's assets last year. And the geology here is very, very interesting. 60% of the land surface area here is underlain by Precambrian rocks of a similar age to West Africa. And many of you will be aware that several hundred million years ago, South America was stuck next to West Africa, which is obviously also a very prolific gold belt. So the geology here is very, very similar. Transparent title, competitive tax rates, relatively low government royalties, and a very large economy, combined with the fact that we can work here 12 months of the year, make this a very attractive place to invest. And the other thing that's not on this slide is, of course, the Brazilian real has depreciated significantly against both the US and Canadian dollars in the last 12 months. So we get a lot more goods and services for our dollars. Now, as I said, the Tapajós was the site of the world's largest gold rush. The gold rush that started here in 1978 was 10 times larger than the California gold rush. Now, this is a complex map, but essentially, you're looking at an area here about 400 kilometers across. The city that we're based is called Itaituba, up here in the north, about 250,000 people. This is a paved highway, the BR-163, and all these tiny little black triangles that you can see on this map were areas where the small miners were washing gold 30, 40 years ago. Now, the largest one, as I said, was this area in here, Cuiú, which is the area that I'm going to be talking about today, and produced an estimated 2 million ounces of placer gold. Eldorado Gold are very active in the area. They control these areas in pink and the deposit right next to us. So I'll show you a more detailed map in a second of that. And we've got Nexa and Anglo American, amongst others, that are also active in this belt. All 5 of the known gold deposits that have been discovered so far, and this is a very immature and an unexplored region in terms of gold, but all 5 of the known deposits so far fit within a big regional scale crustal lineament, which is with this northwest trending feature, which comes through the slide and is a very important structural control. This is looking a little bit more detail about our area that you can see here in pink. We control these areas through here. These areas, blocks in blue, are Eldorado's areas, so our claims are contiguous with theirs. This TZ project, myself and Dennis Moore were directly involved in the discovery of TZ. We used to own the royalty in the project. It's a project that is not currently in production, but it is fully permitted, and it's owned by Eldorado Gold. Now, during the gold rush days, this area, the streams here that are outlined in yellow, produced an estimated 200,000 ounces of placer gold. So our block here to the northwest, you can see there's a lot more streams that are outlined in yellow. These streams produce 10 times more gold than the TZ project. So during the gold rush, there was an estimated 2 million ounces come out of the streams at Cuiú Cuiú. And so essentially what this company is about is we're on a hunt for the source of all that placer gold. Obviously, for those of you who are not familiar with that term, placer gold means gold that has been mined from or washed from the sand and gravel, which has obviously been eroded from the surrounding hills. Now, this map is a more detailed map of this larger ellipse. So we're focusing on this area where all the placer gold came from. And the streams that produce the placer gold here are outlined in these white colors, these spidery kind of lines. And the streams drain down from the northwest and the north, generally down towards the south. So this stream, for example, is actually coming from the west and ultimately down to the south. Now, the background that you're looking at here with all these colors and has a series of wrinkles in it is an airborne magnetic data set. Now, magnetic data is very important because it picks out a lot of the controlling structures here. The black dots are drill holes that we have on the project, and you can see the two deposits here which comprise our current resource. There's about half of the million-ounce resources at Central, which is still open. Both deposits are open at depth and they're open along strike, and the other half would be at MG. So these two deposits are about 5 kilometers apart. So these two deposits explain about approximately 10% of the historic placer gold that was washed in these drainages. There's an awful lot of other gold that's coming down these drainages, for example, in this Powder Merenda, Mutun area, all these drainages to the north, the Miraboa area. There's an awful lot of gold that was washed from the streams here. Most of the gold that's washed from the streams is not explained by the two current deposits. And I'm going to come back to this map as I go forward. I said it is a district. This district shows a whole bunch of other areas. You can see there's a little bit of drilling done outside these two deposits, and all these yellow dots show some of the more important targets. The Alonso target, which I mentioned earlier, where we're currently drilling, has had no previous drilling done to date. This is where we got surface boulders from February of this year that were averaging 91 grams. And I'll come to that a little bit later on. Now, our focus as a company is on the high-grade potential of this district, and there are really three aspects that I'd like to cover briefly in this webinar. The first aspect is that there are clearly high-grade zones within the two existing MG and Central deposits. And so we'll talk a little bit about those. We have over 70 intercepts above 10 grams within those two deposits. As I said earlier, there are high-grade drill intercepts in at least 8 other target areas outside the MG and Central deposits. Now, we haven't done enough drilling on those 8 targets yet to declare additional resources on them, but some of these targets will get additional drilling as part of the current program. And then the other aspect to the high-grade potential here is that there are numerous additional undrilled targets within the project area which are shedding gold in the drainages. I mentioned Alonso, Medusa, and Silmar, but there are a number of others that I don't have time to talk about today. So we'll look at the first aspect first, MG and Central. This cartoon on slide 11 of the deck, and by the way, this deck is on the website if you need to come back to it, but this cartoon shows the style of mineralization that we've got. So we're actually, the rocks here are granitic hosts. They're very similar to what I have on my kitchen countertop here in Vancouver. There are high-grade zones in the center, and these zones can be anywhere up to 10 meters wide, and they are surrounded by low-grade halos, which extend up to 50 meters either side of those narrower high-grade centers. Now, some of you will be aware, when you do a resource estimate, it's done by an independent engineering firm, and we had an estimate that was done in 2019. At the time, we did not have enough high-grade intercepts into the narrow high-grade zones in the center here. And when the engineers look at all the drill data, there is a statistical analysis that's done, and the outlying population or data points are cut back, and that's what's called a top cutting exercise. And generally within gold deposits that are subject to top cuts, and most are, The difference between the cut and the uncut resources can be 5, 10, 15%. In our case, there has been some fairly aggressive top cuts imposed on us here. There's a fairly large difference between the actual resource without the top cuts, based on the actual drill data, and the 43-101 compliant resource that is currently just under 1 million ounces. So there's about 500,000 ounces here. So there's an awful lot of gold that we intersected in the drilling that's not included in the current resource. And that will come in as we get more drill intercepts into the high-grade centers here. So this is MG. Just to go back, MG is this east-west trending deposit through here. We'll look at that first. Here are some of the better drill intercepts that we've got here. These are just the narrow high-grade zones. They're not there. They don't include the low-grade halos, but you can see there's some pretty good drill intercepts in some of these holes. Notably 13 meters at 17 grams, 10 meters at 14 grams. There's obviously narrower sections of very high grade, half a meter at 154 grams, 16 meters at 9. We drilled that last year. That's pretty close to true width. And there are 25, probably over 25 separate high grade drill intercepts of above 10 grams a ton here. This is this map on the left is that east-west trending deposit. The ellipses here are the high-grade pods that we have here. We have one quite large high-grade pod that we think extends 350 meters or so along strike. And then there's a smaller pod to the immediately to the east here. And you can see what the section looks like. Here we have two high-grade zones in red surrounded by a low-grade envelope. And the key thing about these zones are they appear to be continuous, both down dip and along strike. Similar sort of story at Central. We've got a few more drill holes at Central here. We have 40 separate high-grade intercepts at 10 grams or above. And you can see some of the drill data here. I won't run through all these, but again, just about all of these drill intercepts are surrounded by a cloud of low-grade mineralization. So there are very lengthy low-grade intercepts that surround these high-grade zones. And of course, during that top cutting process that I mentioned earlier, a lot of these drill intercepts would have been cut way back. So a lot of that high-grade gold was not included in the current resource estimate. And similar sort of story here. Here's a section on the right, on the bottom right, through the deposit. It is a northwest trending deposit. That map is a magnetic map, but you can see here that there is some sand on the top of this. There it is weathered down to about 30, 40 meters, perhaps a little bit deeper over the ore zone. And the yellow zone is the halo of low-grade mineralization, which here is at least 100 meters wide. And there are 3 high-grade zones that we've traced down dip on this section. So we're pretty confident that these high-grade zones actually do extend down dip and along strike. And that will be one of the foci for the current drill program. Now, the second aspect to the high-grade potential of this project, as I mentioned, is that there are 8 other targets surrounding the 2 existing deposits where we've got some very good drill intercepts. As I said, this is the map that you saw earlier. I put on some of the better high-grade drill intercepts that are all outside the current resource and not included in the resource here. Alonso's on here too. Obviously, we haven't drilled that. We don't have the results back yet, but that's where the rig is currently operating through here. But just to draw your attention to this, for example, 500 meters outside of the southern boundary of Central, we have a drill hole through here that cut 27 meters at 6.9 grams. So that will be followed up as part of this current drill program. We have a number of interesting drill intercepts 1.5 kilometers to the northeast of Central. We have a single hole at Moradalua that we drilled last year that cut 2.8 meters at 19.5. There's a prospect to the south where we cut 39 meters at 5 grams. And just north of MG, about 500 meters north of MG, for example, this again was drilled last year in this Mashishi area. We cut 3.4 meters at 36.9 grams a ton. Last year, we drilled 4,500 meters. In the next 12 months, we're aiming to drill 25,000 meters. And I'll come to that slightly in a little while. There are undoubtedly other areas here outside of these, and the third aspect is some of these other areas that are undrilled. But if we just take a quick look at this zone through here, Central, and then we'll have a quick look at MG before we look at some of these other areas where we've got high-grade boulders on surface. This is the central corridor. And so we have an anomaly here that we've picked out through shallow auger drilling down to about 10 meters. So that's the depth of the soil cover here. That's 5 kilometers long. Now, the resource that we've got so far only occupies about 20% of that trend so far. That's that outline in yellow. The trend comes all the way up through here. It comes through this central north target, the Mutung target area, which we haven't drilled. We've got some very nice numbers on surface here. And the Powder Merenda target, where we've got a few drill holes with some good intercepts. So we're quite confident that we're going to identify additional deposits within that trend in the near future. And I also mentioned to the southeast that we have 1 or 2 holes to the southeast where we have the central southeast target with some very compelling drill intercepts, including 27 meters at 6.9 grams a ton. So lots of potential here to add ounces within the central corridor. And of course, that's just a long strike. I mentioned the central deposit itself is at depth, is open at depth. That is also another source of potential ounces here. It's a similar sort of story at MG, really. You can see the MG deposit, that east-west trending deposit, which is currently part of the million-ounce resource. Last year, we drilled a few holes about 500-600 meters to the north, and we seem to have come up with a lookalike type of deposit at MG. As I said, the resource at MG right now is 500,000 ounces. That will undoubtedly grow just because of the fact that there's a lot of high-grade drill intercepts that are not included. But again, MG is open at depth. We're optimistic it could extend along strike, but there is a parallel zone, 500 meters to the north, where we have a very similar type of scenario. And you can see that in the cross-section here. High-grade vein exposed on surface, 2 to 3 meters wide, surrounded by a lower grade envelope. Here it's about 50 meters in total width. And we don't yet know how big this deposit is, but we are going to be drilling more holes into this, this target within the next few months. And there are some interesting other showings, including this one, which is off trend, 3.4 meters at 36.9 grams I mentioned earlier. We think that might be part of something else. And there is another hole up here to the northeast that I don't have time to talk about, but that is the Machiche Northeast target. So lots of upside here. Now, the third aspect to the high-grade potential is, of course, all these other target areas where we've had no drilling done at all so far. And again, I'm showing this map for the third time. I've expanded it slightly over to the east to include this Medusa target that we identified a whole series of boulders at Medusa back in April, where the surface samples here are averaging about 26 grams a ton. Again, never been drilled. It is 4 kilometers to the east of Alonso, where we're drilling right now. But there are all these other wrinkles in the magnetic data. Now, you folks may not be able to see this on this map, but MG has a very nice wrinkle type signature in the magnetics. And we are very interested in some of these other wrinkles coming through here that appear to be shedding placer gold into these drainages. And just to give you an example, you can see through here where my cursor is, there's a very strong east-west trending wrinkle in the magnetics, which is actually about 4 kilometers long. And all this gold coming down this drainage, placer gold, is currently unexplained. We think it could be coming from this wrinkle. And here's another one which currently doesn't have a name on it. It's not even mentioned as really as a specifically named target, but there is placer gold being mined in the stream down through here, which is flowing from the north to the south. And as the stream crosses this wrinkle, the amount of placer workings blows out, and there's a lot more placer gold being mined downstream of this wrinkle. So we think this wrinkle, which is about 2 or 3 kilometers long, is also potentially prospective. Okay, Alonso, I've already mentioned it. We are drilling here currently. It is the first of over 10 targets that we're going to be testing within the next 12 months. There are coarse nuggets in the pan here from the drainage samples, which really drew the attention of our geologists to the area. And then we found a train of boulders. You can see a sample there, which is about as big as my fist. And all of the boulders were running. I think the lowest value from the quartz vein boulders we had was 11 grams. So not sure yet exactly where these boulders are coming from, but the boulders sit right on top of one of these magnetic wrinkles. And I don't know if you can see it on this map, but there is an east-west trending shadowy feature, which is one of the wrinkles in the magnetics. And it comes up against a post-mineral dike. That's an intrusive dike that has nothing to do with the gold mineralization. We're more interested with this wrinkle coming through here. And that's all the samples that we've got from those boulders so far. So we're pretty confident because the boulders sit right on top of that mag wrinkle that we're very close to the source here. So it'll be very interesting over the next few weeks to see what the drill results are coming from this one. This is the second one that we intend to move to after we finish the drilling at Alonso. And this is, again, is a magnetic map. It's a slightly different scale. So I've zoomed out here. You can see the whole claim area, and the scale bar here is obviously 10 kilometers across. And the reason I've zoomed out is because I wanted to show everybody the fact that that big northwest trending structure that I mentioned in the early claim map here is really picked out beautifully in the magnetic data. And it controls El Dorado's deposit to the south here, Tocantinzinho. Santa Patricia is actually a porphyry target that they have with copper mineralization in it, but the 2 million ounce deposit that's fully permitted at Tocantinzinho sits on this big regional structure. And Medusa sits in a bend in that regional structural feature, which comes down through here, and it extends obviously off-site. And the interesting thing about this, for the geologists amongst you, you will know that big regional structures can be very good places to look for gold deposits, particularly kinks in those structures. And as you may just be able to make out here, there is a bend or a kink in that big regional structure there. So this will be pretty exciting to get some drill holes into this one as well. Silmar is a target here. That map is not the best map, but it is another target about 7 kilometers to the northeast, well within our claim block. This is of interest to us because there's a lot of coarse gold nuggets coming out of the stream here. And so we've been working on identifying the source of those. We've followed this up with surface work, soil sampling, and auger sampling. And we think we now have, we do have several really good target structures where we think these gold nuggets are coming from. So that will also get drilled as part of the current program. Now, it's an exciting district. As I said, we already have 1 million ounces on the board. We believe that this district will get much larger. Last year, as I said, we drilled 4,500 meters of diamond drilling, which is obviously quite expensive. Our average drill cost per meter was around $247 Canadian per meter. That includes the analytical cost. And really, this district, 4,500 meters a year in a district this size with multiple targets will really just take far too long to actually test the ultimate gold endowment within this project area. So we've acquired a drill rig. It's an RC rig. It's a reverse circulation rig. So it's a faster, more aggressive type of drilling, and it is a lot cheaper. And this rig is currently in action. You can see it in action on Twitter. We put some photos on Twitter, on our Twitter feed yesterday, drilling at Alonso. And we estimate that the cost of drilling this year will be around $25 a meter. And that includes the analytical cost. So now we've got this machine, it will allow us to drill much quicker and much more cheaply than the diamond drilling. It does have some limitations. It will only drill holes to 200 meters. And instead of those beautiful sticks of core that you've seen on various websites, we are drilling chips. So the geologists are going to have to look a lot more closely at those chips, but everything will go for analysis. So what's the opportunity here in Cabral? Well, I mentioned that as management team, I am personally one of the largest shareholders in this company. And so I'm very closely aligned with my shareholders. We're credited with 5 gold discoveries in Brazil. And not only do we know how to find these gold deposits, actually we know how to exit. As our last company is now part of Equinox Gold. And we sold that in 2016. A lot of similar companies in the junior resource space, as you folks will be aware, do not have a resource. And so this is your downside protection. We already have 1 million ounces in the ground. As I said, it's going to get a lot bigger, but the 1 million ounces on an enterprise value right now is valued at about just over 40 Canadian dollars an ounce, so around about $30 US an ounce. And I think when you set that against the current gold price, there's that large disparity between what our ounces are currently valued at in the ground and the actual gold price, which is, as you folks know, is almost $2,000 an ounce. lots of upside. I think I've spoken to that, and that isn't just arm waving. We already have some high-grade drill intercepts in 8 other targets. I'm not suggesting that all 8 will ultimately prove to be deposits. I think there's a very good chance one or more of these current targets will ultimately prove to be significant deposits. Lots of news flow. One of the things I look for as an investor in this space is, excuse me, is news flow. And as I said, we've got an aggressive drill program that's in progress. So there'll be a lot of news on multiple targets over the next 12 months. I mentioned the current market cap and the equivalent value. So with that, Tina, I think I'll hand it back to you, and I look forward to addressing as many questions as possible.
Thanks, Alan. That was great. As you mentioned, I think there's a really good opportunity, even though the stock has moved a lot. You have 1 million ounces, which can easily go to 1.5 based on the top cuts. And then with Alonzo, Machichi, Medusa, there's certainly a lot of opportunity here. So I'll open it up to Q&A. If you're watching from YouTube, you can send me an email at tina@adcap.ca. We do have one question right now, which is about the El Dorado deposit. And the question is, if El Dorado's having their operations, if their operations are so close, why hasn't the company or other companies acquired Cabral's assets?
Well, I can't really speak for what El Dorado's strategy is. They have a fully permitted deposit of about 2 million ounces. They haven't made a construction decision. I have no idea if they will, but I'd suggest that there are very few fully permitted gold deposits around the world that are ready for a construction decision, and that is on our doorstep. There's certainly been quite a lot of interest from major companies in terms of what we're doing, but the type of arrangement that we're not interested in that major companies tend to offer small companies like ours are farm-in type arrangements or leading to a joint venture where the major will come in and for 3 years they'll fund your exploration program, but then as a result of funding that exploration program for 3 years and spending X million dollars, they will own 60, 70, 80% of the project. That is not something, and that is not the type of arrangement we're currently interested in. As I said, we already have 1 million ounces on the board. We believe this is going to get much, much larger, and we're certainly not going to do a deal like that before we understand exactly how many deposits we have here and what the total gold endowment of this property is.
Right. Can you comment on the number of holes or meters completed on Alonzo to date?
Not really. What I can say is we have the drill program is going very well. We have an ongoing drill program at Alonzo. It's going to take us, a few weeks to complete that drill program, Tina, and then we'll move to Medusa. So, this is part, as I said, of a very large drill program. It's target number 1. There's obviously quite a lot of interest in what the results will come back from Alonzo. We've just started very recently, we're very pleased with the rig and its performance, and we expect in the next week or 2 to be moving to the Medusa area, and so we hope to have results in the next few weeks and months.
There's a couple questions about. I know the plan is to drill 25,000 meters for this program. What's the plan for the rest of the year, and what's the COVID impact been so far?
Well, firstly, that 25,000 meter program will extend way beyond the end of this year. We're not going to get all that done this calendar year in the next 3 months or so. That's just, we're not able to do that. That time doesn't work. So, in one of the most recent press releases, I laid out what the anticipated program is. That will undoubtedly change. Drill programs always evolve dependent on results as we see results come in. And now the other thing I would say to that is that we have an ongoing, very aggressive surface exploration program. So what we're looking for here is to find another Alonzo and another Medusa. There's a lot of placer gold here that I haven't really focused on in this presentation that's still unexplained. So I'm quite optimistic that we'll find other boulder trains here that could ultimately prove to be targets and that will require drill testing. In terms of the COVID situation, obviously northern Brazil was hit quite badly early on in the pandemic. We know that because we provide basic healthcare facilities for the small community in our area. There's a village here of about 400 folks, and we fund a small little health post, and we do we do basic things, offer medicines and set broken bones and things like that. We fund a nurse. In fact, there's 2 nurses currently on site. So through that health post, we've actually been able to track the evolution of the pandemic in our community, in our area. And 2 to 3 months ago, there was 10 to 15 cases a day. Right now, the situation is there's perhaps 1 case every 10 to 15 days. So it's really dropped right off. So we suspended operations on site here in early April. We went back in mid-July, and obviously we've put a whole series of protocols in place. We test all our employees before and after they arrive on site. And, but we're very comfortable now that the infection rate has dropped off in this part of northern Brazil. There are still areas of Brazil, obviously it's a very large country, southern Brazil, where the pandemic is still, the infection rate is quite high. But in general, the number of infections in Brazil has dropped way down, and it's certainly dropped seriously way down in the area where we work.
That's great. And I think in terms of performance, you can see, we're seeing some of the domestic equities move up a lot kind of earlier when COVID started, but definitely been a catch-up trade here with Cabral, and I think there's definitely more upside given that this is just the start of the drill program. So in terms of the RC rig, how's it performing? Is it still on pace for a hole every 1 to 2 days?
Yeah, it's performing very well. Obviously, there's a learning curve. This is the first time we've tried RC drilling on the project. That rig is a second-hand machine that we had to do some conditioning on. We've actually swapped out the motor, not since we started drilling, but we were a little bit delayed in commencing with the program because we'd put a new motor in it, but we're very happy with it. It's much faster than the diamond drilling work. Like I said, it does have limitations, but very pleased. We were able to get this rig for about $75,000 US secondhand. It only had 200 hours on the clock, and to get that rig imported into Brazil, it's a North American manufacturer, was about 1.1 million. So we acquired the rig for about 7 cents on the dollar. We've hired some very good people, a couple of really excellent guys to run it for us, and we're really happy with the performance. So we're still on a learning curve, we're not a drilling company. That's not the focus of our business. What we want to do is we're utilizing this rig, which came to us as an opportunity. As I said, we got it for 7 cents on the dollar, and is going to allow us to drill an awful lot more meters this year than we would get if we spent that money on diamond drilling. So no, it's going well.
There are a couple of questions as well on the timing of drill results and how deep you're going per hole. I think you said the RC goes down to 200 meters.
Yeah, that's 200 meters. So the true depth, and they're all inclined holes because the structures here are largely vertical to subvertical. So we want to be drilling inclined holes which are intersecting those structures at depth. So that's a limitation. So the actual vertical depth maximum will be about 150 meters. Sorry, what was the second part of your question, Tina?
When would initial drill results be ready for the market?
Yeah, well, I can say that there'll be a series of drill results coming out. So throughout the next 12 months, there are multiple catalysts here. This isn't just a case of, first set of drill results on the first few holes and then there's nothing else going to be happening here. There'll be a whole series of things. So look, we already have some of the samples in the lab already. The lab turnaround times, if they're very quick, are 2 weeks. Generally, they're averaging 3 or 4 weeks. So I'd ask, I know everybody's very excited to see these results, but I'm probably more excited than all of you guys because I am one of the largest shareholders, and B, this is something that I eat, sleep, and drink every day. We'll put those out as soon as we can. What we're not going to do is put a single hole out the results on a single hole out. You know, we're going to put the results out in batches on several holes together. So we'll see. It's an exciting time.
In terms of Alonzo, I'm always curious kind of about the predictability of an asset or a target. Have any of the other targets given you a better sense of the predictability of Alonzo?
It's a tricky one, Tina, because there are, you know, I'm not sure who coined the phrase for every 100 or so prospects, you ultimately only end up with one mine. And that may or may not be the case. Certainly, I've looked at hundreds, if not thousands, of gold prospects in my career, and I've never seen anything quite like this one in terms of the sheer number of quality targets here. One thing I will say about Alonzo is we have never seen so many samples on surface with these type of grades. I mean, some of the other targets have individual samples with very high grades in them, but there's just so many samples with very high grades here. So it makes it kind of unusual. Now, I'm not suggesting that there's a deposit there that's averages 91 grams. There could be, and obviously we'll all be very happy if there is. But all I can say to that is we haven't seen a target with quite so many boulders averaging quite such a good gold grade. So it's quite exciting times. And the other thing I like about this is that those gold nuggets that we're seeing in the pan extend over at least 1 kilometer, and the magnetic signature of what appears to be the source of these things, these boulders, is also, you know, well over 1 kilometer long. It's around about 2 kilometers long, which suggests that the potentially the mineralized structure could have some size to it. So, but I don't think I could comment further than that. Look, there's no certainty around any of these targets. We have no idea what we're going to get. We obviously, but our shareholders are going to be exposed to the results of on multiple targets here. And so this isn't a case of, you know, we announced a drill program testing one target. We've just announced a very big drill program testing at least 10 targets. And as I said, I think the surface work is going to continue to throw up additional targets. As we try and run down, whilst the drilling is going on, we'd run down the source of some of this other placer gold. So it's going to be quite interesting.
In terms of the geology, Eldorado's deposit, which is only 20 kilometers away, is a 2.1 million ounce deposit. Is the geology similar to what you're seeing at Cuiú Cuiú, or are you seeing many differences? And can you kind of give a comparison of the two assets? Yeah,
well, look, I can only go on what I've read in the technical report that Eldorado has on the website. In fact, they have a page regarding the Tanzania or the TZ project. Anybody who has an interest, have a look at the technical report, but it's hosted in very similar sort of rocks, granitic rocks. Eldorado bought that asset in 2010 when they acquired a company called Brazouro, and the resource that Brazouro defined at the time was 2.5 million ounces. Eldorado's had the project for 10 years. They've done obviously quite a lot of work on it since then that you can see in the 43-101 report. And the resource is still around about 2.3 million ounces. So the resource has not grown. And the real difference between their project is a single anomaly. There's a single soil anomaly here. There's a project there, an asset there, a resource there, but it's not part of a larger district. The difference with ours is that we've got multiple targets here. We already have 2 deposits, not 1, albeit the 2 deposits are currently smaller than theirs. But we have all these other areas where we've got high-grade drill intercepts around it. And that, from what I read of their technical report, seems to be the key difference. They don't have multiple targets, and they don't seem to have all these high-grade zones, both within their deposit and around their deposit team.
Well, it's interesting because I believe their NPV at 1,500 gold is 400 million on that deposit. So it kind of gives you a bit of color on the size of the opportunity with Cabral. And I can easily conceptualize the company getting to 2 million, but even 3 to 5 million based on what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I think one thing I will say is when Eldorado acquired the asset by buying Brazoru, that deal I think was a $110 million deal. So I think that was US. I'd need to check, but that would value their ounces in the ground at significantly higher than what our ounces are currently valued at. So which are about 30 US. So you know, just on the basis of the last gold cycle 10 years ago, acquiring a similar sort of stage asset, albeit larger than the current one, but with much more limited upside, was valued a lot higher than the ounces in the ground that we have. So, I think that's also worth bearing in mind.
So on the same vein, there's a question from the audience about what valuation would you be hoping for the end of 2021, which is a little bit hard to give a target on there, but I don't know if you want to give that a go.
Well, as much as I'd like to, I cannot predict or cannot suggest what the gold, what our share price is going to go to. I think you know, some of you who are shareholders have seen that there is a lot more interest in this company. Not only has the share price gone up, but I think if you look at the daily average volume, there's an awful lot more shares being traded per day than there was 3 to 6 months ago. I think it's going to be very exciting. There's going to be a constant stream of results. If you look at companies that have a district scale project, as we do, which is truly world class, I think there are real grounds for optimism here that this company, within the next 6 to 12 months, may be in a position to demonstrate there are several additional deposits here, apart from the current 2, and which translates to potentially a significantly larger total resource in the property. One other comment I would make on this, Tina, in terms of this opportunity and this company here, is that during the gold rush days that happened 40 years ago, there was 200,000 ounces produced on Eldorado's ground next door to us from the streams. Our area produced an estimated 2 million ounces of gold. That's according to the Brazilian government. So their ratio, and they have a 2 million ounce hard rock deposit that sits right under those streams. So their ratio of placer gold to hard rock gold is currently 1 to 10. And they haven't added anything in terms of resources in the last 10 years. Our ratio is currently 1 to 0.5. Now, obviously, we have a lot more work to do on our project, but if our ratio ultimately approaches anything close to their current ratio, there will be an awful lot more gold coming out of the resource at Cuiú Cuiú. Even if the ratio's half of what theirs is, i.e. for every ounce that was produced during the gold rush, there's only 5 ounces in the hard rock underneath, not 10 ounces as is the case at Eldorado, but if it's 5 ounces on our project, that would be a 10 million ounce ultimate gold endowment in our area. So we've got something special here. The other thing I would say, look, I'm an investor. So you folks that are watching this, you're investing in the junior mining space or actually considering an investment in the junior mining space. The things I look for as an investor are management. Now, have they been involved in discoveries? Have they exited? Have they sold companies in the past? Have they actually invested their money into their companies? There are lots of CEOs who will say, well, they own 10% of the company or whatever, but actually awarded themselves a large chunk of stock and didn't put any money in. I'm investing real money in this, and I'm probably going to have to write another check here because I have some of these warrants that are outstanding. So I don't expect any of you folks to consider an investment in this company if I, as the CEO, am not invested in it. And by the way, if you want to know what my salary is too, which we don't need to get into, it's under the investors page under Q&A. So quite happy to post that. You guys should be aware of what senior management is earning. The other thing I look for, a jurisdiction. This is an excellent jurisdiction for lots of different reasons, and you're in good company with some of Canada's largest gold mining companies with operations in country. We have an existing resource here. So unlike a lot of other companies which have a great story, there is some downside risk protection, I would suggest to you folks. We already have 1 million ounces on the board. And the other thing I look for is upside. Personally, I'm not interested in investing in a company that could where the resource could grow 30%, 40%. I want to invest in companies, and I do invest in companies where the resource could be 5 times bigger or 10 times larger. And of course, news flow is also key. It's no good having all these things if there's no news coming out. You have no catalysts. And so, as I said, we're going to be having lots of news coming out, not just on the drilling, but also on the regional exploration program. It's a very big piece of ground. You know, it's 360 square kilometers. There's lots of other areas here where we don't know where the gold is coming from yet. So those are some of the things I look for. So that's a very long-winded answer, I'm afraid.
You mentioned kind of the most recent financing. You participated and have participated several times in the past. You also have a warrant position. There's a question from the audience about whether or not there's an acceleration clause with the warrants. I think this past round was just straight common share deal, but you have some warrants as well from a previous deal.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the last financing was done at 12.5 cents. We closed that in July and had no warrant. And we announced initially a $2 million financing. We actually had orders for about 7 million, and we didn't market it that widely. We ended up closing on about 4.2. The bulk of that, virtually all of that financing, apart from one order from RBC, was non-brokered. Now, in terms of the warrants relate to the financing that we did last year, and I invested, I think, 300,000 in that financing last year. There was a 1-year warrant. Those warrants were set to expire, I think it was July, perhaps August. They had a 1-year term on them. They're set at 20 cents. They're the only warrants we have outstanding. And because of the COVID shutdown, Tina, we wanted to be fair to everybody. We anticipated drilling obviously much sooner than we're currently drilling. We suspended the operations on site for 3.5 months. So we wanted to be fair to people. You know, we didn't expect people to take it on the chin and be penalized for the fact that we weren't able to do any work on site. So we've extended those for 4 months. And if all the warrants get exercised, as I said, they're currently well in the money, but if all the warrants get exercised, that will bring in approximately another additional 3.5 million Canadian dollars into the treasury, which will allow us to do even more drilling. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. There's another question about the average depth of the incoming drill holes.
Yeah, the average depth, well, we've only just started, so I think the average planned depth that Adrian has laid out in the plan is probably about 150 meters. Obviously, some of them will push, hopefully, as close to 200 meters as we can, and 1 or 2 will be shorter holes. So that's the big limitation. Obviously, there's enormous potential on this property at depth. But as you go deep, obviously, it's much more expensive. You have to drill through lots of unmineralized rock to get down to those deep areas. And we're not at that point on this project. We have so much gold at or close to surface here that, you know, our focus as part of this current drill program is going to be on those near surface areas. Now, if 1 or more of these targets come back with some cracking high-grade results, then we may have to modify the program and bring in a rig that allows us to drill deeper. And as I said, that feeds into what I said earlier. This drill program will evolve in terms of its priorities and its directions. But rest assured, we're going to be doing a lot of drilling here.
Well, if you have to drill deeper, that's probably a good problem to have. We're coming up to the hour. If anyone has any last-minute questions, feel free to put them into the Q&A box. We have one other question asking about a plan for increasing marketing throughout the drill program.
Yes, yeah, I got asked that by somebody else earlier today in an email. Yes, we have a number of initiatives in process, and obviously this webinar is part of that. We are planning several other webinars. We've just engaged a group to make some ads for us out in Toronto. So we are going to obviously ramp up our marketing efforts. I'm doing the Beaver Creek conference. I'm very, very pleased that we got excited this year. We got invited, and I did get excited to Beaver Creek Conference this year, and some of your viewers will know that that's an invite-only type of thing. Unfortunately, it's not open to everybody. You have to be a qualified investor. They're a little bit choosy about who they invite, but you know, we've never had an invitation to go there, and this year we did, and there are a maximum of 20 one-on-one meetings per day over 3 days. So there's 20 slots, and I think so far we've filled 58 of them. So we are going to be doing a lot more marketing over the next few months. Some of you will be aware we're already followed by several different newsletter writers, and I'd encourage you to all follow us on Twitter if you can, and LinkedIn. Yes, I mean, the answer to that is yes. One other thing before I go, guys, I mean, a lot of you, when I look at these sort of presentations, you know, somebody shows me a gold bar or something like that. There's a gold bar on the front cover or something like this. So here's a gold nugget, right? Now, this one was found in May, not on our property, but a property that's quite close. So this isn't something I got off the internet. That's my friend's watch, and that is an 18-kilo gold nugget. So that gives you, I saw something on the BBC recently, we were talking about some gold nuggets they'd found in Australia, which was much smaller than this. I think that it speaks to the potential of this area. There was 1 million people here washing gold from the streams in this region, and it's virtually unexplored. And we control the area that was the richest one during the gold rush. So if the general rule of thumb that where there's a lot of placer gold, there should be a bigger deposit is correct, we should have a lot more gold at Cuiú ultimately.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting times. I'm looking forward to seeing how some of these drill results turn out. We do have a final comment, more of a comment than a question, but just saying to keep doing good work, and seems like you have some shareholders who are pretty happy with not only the stock price performance, but I think excited to see what's next for the company. So thanks again for the presentation, appreciate it, and looking forward to the drill results.
Thanks, Tina, and I'd like to thank everybody who is already a shareholder for being a shareholder and supporting us. And hopefully you've made money on your investment. If you're not yet a shareholder and you have additional questions, please check out our website, cabralgold.com, or feel free to email me. You can reach me at alan@cabralgold.com. And most of our shareholders know I'm pretty responsive. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks very much.
Thank you.